Good morning. Wanted to hop on here real quick this morning and just take a minute to talk about self-talk. As I spend more and more time alone, just really listening to my own internal dialogue and my external dialogue, because I talk out loud to myself more often than most folks, and it's just become a part of my normal routine. Simply helps me think clearer, and it just works for me. People look at me strange all the time, and I just smile. But noticing what you're saying to yourself. A lot of my out loud talking is, just sort of processing things as I'm going through the day. My brain thinks really fast, and it has lots of thoughts at the same time. And if I'm out somewhere where other people's energy is affecting me, I get distracted and I get confused and I forget things and I forget why I'm where I am, and sort of walking myself through things out loud helps, and I have ceased to be embarrassed by that. The other thing is just noticing how you're talking to yourself. On days when I'm not having a great day, when I start tuning in, I often notice that my self-talk is not real great. I am worst case scenarioing everything, and I'm letting my anxiety run the show. And my anxiety talks really fast, and it tries not to give anybody else a chance to hear anything. And so it's noticing that for myself and starting to talk back to that anxiety, and throwing in some, you're not wrong, but let's back up for a minute. Yes, that certainly could go wrong, but if we're anticipating that, what might we do to support ourselves in a different way, to pay attention, to create some emotional control around that so that it doesn't hit so hard. This is a slippery slope, because anxiety can make you want to go to worst case scenario all the time. And when I started to embrace that, I was like, okay, if my mind is just going to jump to worst case scenario, let's play that out. What is the worst case scenario? And what I found over time was, worst case scenario is, well, probably that you're going to die. And is that likely? And no. What I didn't realize is that I spent my daughter's entire childhood making her think we might die. To me, I was reassuring myself, the worst thing that's going to happen is we're going to die. And, we're probably not going to. In her little mind, what she was hearing was, oh my God, everything could kill us. And I laugh now because, we've talked about it. And, unfortunately, it's something that she had to work through growing up. And she had to realize, that's just mom's way of coping with her anxiety. And so if you do talk out loud and you process things out loud, pay attention to how that might be affecting other people around you as well. Another thing I used to do a lot, constantly, is complain. And I still catch myself wanting to go on those tangents. But it used to be starting as soon as my feet hit the floor in the morning, I was complaining out loud. And so now I really work hard that, when I wake up in the morning, to really pay attention to that internal dialogue. What am I setting myself up for today? Am I looking for the good? Am I reaching for what can be done? Or am I dreading everything? Am I worst case scenarioing everything? Am I creating anxiety that is even taking me out of my routine? And what might I do differently? On those mornings that are really hard, I will try to slow down and take some breaths and pray, put on some music, do some of those things that are really supportive. And again, it's, listening to the self-talk, changing the self-talk, noticing how we're automatically responding to some of our triggers or some of the things that might be coming up as we prepare for our day. And even as we get our day started, what are we saying to ourselves on the drive to work? What are we saying to ourselves when we pull into the parking lot? What are we saying to ourselves when we walk through the door and things start to bombard us? You're beginning to notice those responses and then what those responses lead to and how they affect our interactions, how they affect the way that we feel, the way that we care for ourselves, the way that we respond in our relationships. One of my favorite little stories I like to use is if you were sitting on a couch next to someone who talked to you the way that your inner voice is currently programmed to talk to you, how long would you sit there? And it's taking into consideration that you can't run away from yourself. And so you're constantly feeding yourself these messages. Would you want someone else to say these things to you? And if not, why are you saying them to yourself? Oftentimes we are carrying a dialogue from early childhood or from a relationship along the way where we really have someone else's voice in our head or the things that they said to us. And those things are not necessarily helpful or healthy. And maybe at one time they were. But as we've moved along in life and as we've changed and evolved, we've needed that inner dialogue to change. And so just beginning to be present with that, just one more thing to sort of introduce into that practice, that application of being present. Sometimes paying attention can feel exhausting, but I always notice on those days that I don't pay attention, those are really the days that I'm the most exhausted. And so I send you light and love as you continue to dig, as you continue to notice, as you continue to just be present. And just that gentle reminder that even though we're doing the work, we can relax. It's not life or death. It's not having to look for the worst case scenario all the time. Sometimes it's just taking a deep breath and letting the sunshine warm your face, or listening to the birds. We don't always have to be fixing. Being present can sometimes just mean being still. Namaste.